Changes come, things change. Sometimes we like it, sometimes we don't. One thing that is kind of associated with change is nostalgia. And I just want to start with nostalgia. And nostalgia is associated with yearning for the past, the possibilities and events, the good old days. Everybody's heard talk, and people talk about the good old days. Warm childhood, memories that they have. And you know, nostalgia has important psychological features. It actually helps us, it improves our mood. It increases our social connectedness, because you know, we can get together with other people that have similar memories from the good old days. It enhances positive self-regard. Many nostalgic reflections serve more than one function and seem to benefit those who experience them. You sit around with people and you're talking about the good old days or the past revivals and the all-night prayer meetings, and everybody has good feelings. They're uplifted, they're encouraged. But some of these benefits can lead to chronic trait of nostalgia proneness, which is not a good thing. The good old days, we all have things that we like to think about from our childhood, things that our parents shared about when they were young. Maybe you're a horse lover. But I can guarantee you nobody's really wanting to farm with horses now. The average farmer would walk 11 miles to plow an acre with a horse and a single furrow plow. Most of us aren't up for that no more. We like our tractors, we like our multi-furrow plows, we can get it done quickly. Maybe you remember when families were larger and people had a lot of kids and you think how nice that would be. I remember my grandmother, she was one of 13, and she said people always stopped by because they knew there'd be something to eat at her house. Her father had so many kids to feed, there'd always be something, and one more mouth wouldn't seem like a lot. She remembered like some of her aunts would tell their kids when they went to school, you just go home with Andrew's kids. They'll have something for you. Because a lot of people back then didn't have a lot extra. It was during the Depression. People were just getting by, and some people just didn't have it. So if they thought they could send their kid home for lunch from school with Andrew's kids, then, you know, they'd get a bite to eat. It might only be potatoes, slice of bread, but they'd get something. Maybe you look back and remember fondly the one-room schoolhouse, but we often forgot the walk. I know when my father started school, when he was 5 or 6, whenever school first started, they walked to the schoolhouse. They walked 4 kilometers each way. I mean, if you told your kid to walk 4 kilometers to get to school now, they'd say you were going to abuse them. It'd be child abuse. But that's the way it was, and other kids walked further. So, you know, all our memories, we look back and we pick and we choose the positive and the good things, the things we like to remember. Sometimes we forget about the harder side of life back then. In Genesis chapter 19, verse 15, and yes, reading down from there, there's a big change coming. There's a big change coming to someone's life. I'm starting at verse 17. And when it came to pass, when they had brought them forth abroad, that he said, escape for thy life. Look not behind thee, neither stay thou in all the plain. Escape to the mountain, lest thou be consumed. And Lot said unto them, Oh, not so, my Lord. Behold, now thy servant hath found grace in thy sight. Thou hast magnified thy mercy, which thou hast showed unto me, in saving my life, and I cannot escape to the mountain, lest some evil take me and I die. Behold, now this city is near to flee unto, and it is a little one. Oh, let me escape thither. Is it not a little one? And my soul shall live. And he said unto him, See, I have accepted thee concerning this thing also, that I will not overthrow this city for the which thou hast spoken. Haste thee, escape thither, for I cannot do anything till thou become thither. Therefore, the name of the city was called Zoar. And the sun was risen upon the earth when Lot entered Zoar. And the Lord rained upon Sodom and Gomorrah brimstone and fire from the Lord of heaven. And he overthrew those cities and all the plain and all the inhabitants of the cities and that which grew upon the ground. But his wife looked back from behind him, and she became a pillar of salt. Lot's wife became a pillar of salt. She looked back. I think a lot of it was she was afraid of the change. She was afraid of what was coming. She was afraid of a life she wasn't familiar with. She looked back with longing on what she knew and what she had experienced in the past. She looked back to a smoldering Sodom, clinging to the past. She did not want to turn away from it. As a result, she was frozen in time as a pillar of salt. Think of all the things that we would not have if everyone kept looking back. And we're afraid to change. With change, sometimes there is risk. Sometimes the good, and then the good will outweigh the bad. Indoor plumbing. We all love our indoor plumbing. But, sometimes it comes with the side effects of it backs up, it floods your basement, the pipes break, they freeze, cause extra work. But we love our indoor plumbing. My grandmother was a girl. They used to walk to the well, take their bucket, and she said one time there was a bear down there around the well, and they knew it was around. No one had really seen it, but there was tracks and stuff. So her and her sister, my grandmother's name was Ruth, her and her sister Alice decided they had to go down to the well to get some water. So they were walking her down there, and they got almost to the well, and my grandmother just took the bucket and threw it and headed for home, just as fast as she could run. Alice was right behind her, just a-huffing her. And they get up there, and Alice's like, "Oh, my word, Ruth, what did you see?" And Ruth said, "Nothing." And she walked back down to get the water at the bucket. Apparently, Alice was quite upset with her. So yes, you may say that I come by some of my remarks and jokes a little bit honestly. But there's lots of things that, electricity is another thing that, most of us would find it very hard to go very long without electricity. How would we charge our phones? Electricity has become vital to almost to our daily survival. But did you know that in Canada, there's about 4,800 electrical fires every year? So with electricity, with the change comes all these good things, but yet there's still some things that, if we had known that, would we have proceeded? If we had known what the change involved, would we have developed electricity and become as reliant on it as we are today? Same with vehicles. 1,745 people died in 2020 in vehicle accidents. Would we have developed those if we knew what was ahead? And sometimes that's the way it is with change. We don't know all the answers down the road, but we know we need to change. We can't go back. We must move forward, even though it's a little scary and we're not sure. Because as church members, we look back. We do. We remember great revivals. We remember, back in the early 1900s when Pentecostal got started here in North America. We look back to all-night prayer meetings. We think of the, month-long revival services that we've had in the past. But thinking and sitting and thinking about these things, spiritually, we've become like Lot's wife. We're just a pillar of salt sitting there. We're not focused on what we can do and move ahead and change. We remember the Sunday school and the church buses and the knocking on doors and the handing out of tracts. And not that any of this stuff is bad, and we can still do it. But times are changing, and it's not as maybe effective as it once was. Not saying don't do it, not saying it doesn't work. It does. We still pray, we still give Bible studies, we still invite people. That is how we win souls to Christ. That is how we do it. It wasn't that long ago that everyone had a connection to church. Everybody went to church, or their parents went to church, their grandparents went to church. If they didn't go, they were familiar with church. They knew what it was. They had gone to Sunday school as a kid, things like that. But now we have a lot of people in our communities and in our world that the only thing that they know church for is funerals and weddings. That's the only time they ever set foot inside the church door. Then a lot of them, the only thing they hear about church is on the news or social media, and a lot of times it's not good. So how do we change this? How do we move past this? How do we evangelize our world in a world that's constantly changing? We can't always rely on what we used to do. We need to think outside the box. We need to embrace change and move forward. There's so many things that we can do that we never used to be able to do. Social media. We can post Bible studies that can reach hundreds, thousands, that go around the world, literally. We can reach people that maybe we would never have come in contact with before. A couple months ago, someone posted on Facebook. She was just looking for some friends, so I responded. Now I have like 5 new friends that I didn't even know before. And we go out and we have suppers and we, go to different things and do things together. But that's an opportunity for me to influence somebody. And maybe you're going to the park with your kids, so you just throw that out there. And maybe somebody is wanting to go with their kid, but they don't want to go alone. So you say, hey, play date. Going to O'Connell Park. Going to be there at 3 if anybody with their kids wants to go. We'll be there. The splash pad, whatever. There's different things now that we need to think outside the box. What we've always done is not always going to work for us. The power of God is still the same. Doesn't matter what vehicle or what avenue it goes to the person in. So whether we reach them online, whether we still knock on doors, whether we teach a Bible study, whether we invite them to church, whether we invite them to online church because we know that they would rather come into our kitchen and watch than go into the church building for the first time. Maybe that's how we introduce some people to church. I don't know. Maybe you watch online church and have coffee. And maybe after, a couple of services like that, maybe they'll be more willing to come to church. They kind of see what it's like. They have an understanding. It's not so scary. The change is not so great. It's not easy to connect outside our regular circles. But we need to. We need to make friends. We need to make friends with people that we wouldn't normally see, to make disciples. If we're going to reach them, if we're going to reach the world, if we don't want to be like Lot's wife and become a spiritual pillar of salt that doesn't benefit anyone, we've got to be willing to get out there and to move forward and change. Remember the tortoise and the hare. It's slow and steady wins the race. There's a lot of things that we do that, some people can do certain things with evangelism and hundreds walk through the door. Some of us can do other things or the same thing and 10 walk through the door. It doesn't matter how many come through the door. It's as long as you're reaching, as long as you're bringing, as long as you're teaching, as long as you're talking, as long as you're influencing them for Jesus. Be their friend. So many people out there are looking for a friend. That's all they want, is someone who will be their friend. A friend that sticks closer than a brother. Someone that they can go to when they have needs. Someone that they know will pray for them. And eventually you can reach them for the Lord. God has promised that in the last days He would pour out His Spirit on all people. He said, your sons and your daughters, your old men and your servants, everybody would have visions and dream dreams and speak in tongues, and just there would be a mighty revival. And when we think of the apostolic church when it first started, that was a huge change. You take going from the regular Judaism, the synagogue worship, the rituals, the sacrifices, and you change into what we call the apostolic church. Think of the change. There's men and women that are moving ahead, that are evangelizing the world. They're changing. This is not what they've grown up in. This is not what they used to do to connect to God. This is totally different. They never used to be evangelistic. You were just born Jewish or you weren't. Things changed drastically for them. But you know what? Because of that change, you and I now have access to Jesus. If they hadn't gone ahead with the change, if they hadn't accepted the changes and moved with them and moved forward and brought the church to where it is today, where would we be? We're Gentiles. We don't belong with the Jews. as far as the old Jewish religion would have taught. But now we are all one in Christ. Doesn't matter our birthplace, our culture, our nationality, our race, our previous religious beliefs. We now have a church that has gone through changes, and we now accept those who come, those that Jesus forgives, those that repent and that are baptized and are walking in truth. They are now the church. But if the original church had never changed, where would we be? Don't be like the Israelites. They complained and wished they were back in Egypt. The change was difficult for them. They didn't understand, what God was going to do for them. They wanted to go back to the onions and the leeks, but somehow they seemed to have forgotten the slavery and the whips. The promised land was scary for them. They didn't know how God was going to do it, and they didn't know how God was going to move, and they wanted what was familiar. And we can get that way. It's so easy to want what's familiar, to come into a service and know what to expect. Okay, so-and-so is going to get up, and they're going to do the opening and the announcements. The sister will play 3 or 4 songs. Somebody will get up and preach, and we'll all go home. And we get familiar with that, and we expect that. And sometimes when it gets a little different, we get a little uneasy. It's change. Change is not easy for anyone. Change is not easy for me. Change is not easy for you. But I want to encourage you that we need to look for opportunities. Look for opportunities that, yes, things will be done a bit different. Things won't always be the same, but we can move onward, press forward to the mark of the high calling that we have in Christ Jesus. I don't know about you, but I don't want to be a pillar of salt. I don't want to be like Lot's wife, looking back, always behind me to what we had or what we did or what we used to do. I want to, and I have been, I've been praying, Lord, give me opportunities. Opportunities, I don't know what they are. Going out with 4 or 5 people that I don't even know is totally something that I would never have done. Why I responded to that at that time, I don't know. But I did. Now I have 4 or 5 more friends than I did before. People that I probably would have never met otherwise. So that's the things that we need to do. We need to look for the things, the changes, the things that maybe it's not what we used to do or it's not what we're familiar with. But, that change, that going, meeting someone that you don't know, reaching out to someone that you have no idea what's going on in their lives, but you just know something is. Giving somebody a hand, doing something that, maybe it really took a lot out of your own day. But it's these things that draw people. It's these things that make you the friend that they go to when they need it, when they need something, when they need Jesus. So just look for the opportunities. Because life, the past is the past, and we can learn from the past. We can learn things that maybe didn't work so great. We can learn things that worked really well. And we'll always have history to learn from. And, we'll look back and we'll fondly remember, but don't get stuck there. Don't get stuck in the past. Move forward. Reach out to those around us. We need to. Because God's got to pour out end-time revival, and we want to be a part of that. And we want to be able to change and go with that. So if God brings hundreds of people in the door, that we can change so that we don't have to sit where we normally sit. We can sit out in the overflow. Or we don't have to sing the songs we normally do because we'll sing the new songs that most of the people know. Or, whatever it is that we can do, the small things that are going to make other people comfortable, that are going to bring people in, that are going to let them feel loved and let them feel Jesus, those are the changes we need to make. And those changes will come, and things will come, and we need to prepare. So you're thinking, well, what can I do? Well, some of us, maybe we need to practice doing a Bible study because we've never done one before. I know I've never really taught one before. I've done a couple of small single things, but not really done like the 12-week Search for Truth or In His Marvelous Light or whatever. So maybe we need to practice that. Maybe we need I really don't know. Maybe we need to volunteer with something in our community. Something outside the church. Like we volunteer with, I don't know, Crisis Pregnancy Center. We volunteer with the food bank. We volunteer with some other organizations that are out there helping people. Because if we can help meet their physical needs, we can also have an opportunity to meet their spiritual needs as well. So I just want to encourage you, look for opportunities. Look for ways to change, to move forward. Not change for change's sake, but change because we need to, because it's better, because we can bring more people through to Jesus. Because God knows where everyone is. God knows where you and I are, and He knows how we work, and He knows what we think about, and how the opportunities that He can send our way that we can seize and take hold of to move the gospel forward, to move the love of Jesus throughout our world, to change the world for Him. Be a world changer.